In today's video, we're going to learn some of the main objects that we create in Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a very famous and useful tool. It's most of all the companies using Kubernetes for container orchestration. So Kubernetes is very huge compared to all other tools in DevOps. It is very huge and it takes a lot of time to learn because it recites a lot of concepts like ingress controller, Helm charts, Argo CD. It recites a lot of topics and yeah, it takes a lot of time to learn Kubernetes, but I'm making this video to make this easy. I'm picking some important concepts in Kubernetes, and it will be easier for you to learn Kubernetes very easily, in a easier way. Because I struggled to learn Kubernetes. I studied a lot of concept. I stuck my mind with a lot of concept, but I didn't know what are all the concepts are very important and where should I focus. So these are the concepts where you should focus on. So here I've explained four main objects. Actually, we have typically we have 8 to 9 main objects. Those 9 objects are very important, but these four main objects we use very often, and it's those are very important. In today's agenda, we'll get to know what are objects, pods, replica set, services. In services, we have three main configurations: cluster IP, node port, load balancer, and finally we have higher level deployment. That is higher level object that we create, that is what deployment is. In deployment we have rolling update, that is a configuration or provision we have. uh, Typically, as I told, we have 8 to 9 main objects that we create in Kubernetes. First one is pods. So when it comes to Kubernetes, we talk about a lot about pods because here we don't use container much. The word container is not very useful here. We talk about pods here. So pods means it's a abstraction layer, so to speak. It's a overlay, okay, which holds the container. It's a abstraction layer which holds the container. So for example, you have your cell phone, smartphone, and you have your screen guard, right, to secure your screen. So that layer is what pod. Okay, so that pod, uh, that layer, no, which holds the container. Okay, that is what pod is. It is a lower level object that we create in Kubernetes, and it's an abstraction layer, so to speak. And next is replica set. Replica set is nothing but we are going to create a replica of one single pod, or we are going to create a similar pods, okay, set of similar pods. That is what replica set. And we here we can scale up and scale down the pods, number of pods. So okay, so that is the main use of this replica set. Okay, within just by giving one single command, we can scale up or scale down the number of pods. Okay, and also service we create when we want to access our application within the container externally. Okay, from external browser, so we use node port. However, we port map our port in Docker. Same way, we gonna same concept we use here, node port, to access a container externally. Okay, and also we have cluster IP. So cluster IP means to make a connection between the two containers. If two containers wants to communicate between them, we need one okay, we need a path or we need a way. So that way is provided like cluster IP. Okay, so it makes possible uh, that two containers can communicate between themselves. That is cluster IP. And load balancer means, we know that load balancer means what. So it divides the it distributes the load equally to all the containers we have. Okay, for example, in container one, have hosted one application, and similar way I have hosted a same application on another container. So what happens, load balancer, which distributes the load, it distributes the traffic equally among the containers, that is a load balance. And deployment, which is a very higher level object that we create in Kubernetes. And also namespace means for example, you will be working on your cluster. Okay, cluster means what? It's a group of virtual machines or group of nodes. Okay, so in one cluster we'll be having many resources. Okay, and multiple team will be working on that cluster, and we need a isolation. I don't want everybody to have access to all the resources I have in my cluster. Maybe I'll be managing my microservices, or I'll be managing my environments, different environments. So I don't want everybody to have access to all the resources. I need a isolation. Okay, that isolation is provided by this object, that is namespace. And config maps and secrets are kind of similar, but config maps, it's like it saves the data in key value. Okay, so it's very simple, it stores the data in key value. But secrets usually we use it for to store our tokens, confidential information, keys, specifically keys, and some of passwords and all. So that is about secrets. And demon sets means if you want to have a copy of the resources. At that time we use daemon sets. Okay, that is this is about brief introduction of all the objects. But in today's video we're going to learn four main objects, that is pods, replica sets, service, and deployments. Here you can see, here we have a pod. Inside a pod we have a container. Inside a container we have a web server, that is nginx. We have application there. So this is how our objects look like. Okay, this is pod, container. Inside a container we have our application, that is web server nginx. And this is replica set means which includes, okay, group of pods. And also we have service and deployment. Okay, so pods means pod is the smallest execution unit in Kubernetes. Pods are the smallest deployable unit of computing that I can create and manage in Kubernetes. I can create a pod, it's a smallest deployable unit. Okay, and I can manage in Kubernetes. Pod is a group of one or more containers. As I told, we can create multiple containerized, what do you call, multiple container pod also, and with shared storage and network resources. That is about pods. So when we are creating a pod, so this is the code, this is the YAML code, pod definition file we have to write. I'll show you how to do it. So once I start practical session, because I was using Google Kubernetes engine for practicing Kubernetes, because it that service was free in Google for 3 months. So but make sure if you people are using GKE, so after using it, delete the cluster after practicing your exercises, because even though it's a free service, you may get cost for the service you have used. So that is why I'll show you how to do it. So we have to create a pod definition file, and we have to run the, what do you call that, command. Here I have given the command. So we have to give uh, the pod definition file. We have to edit the pod definition file dot via YML file, and then we have to create a that file. Then we'll be able to get pods. Okay, so for creating pod, or for creating any object, we should use the API version. We'll be having different API versions. For that you have to check, and you have to specify which API version. For example, I'm using pod, I should use the API version v1. Like likewise, if I'm creating a replica set, for that we have to use a different API version. Okay, that is available in official Kubernetes document. You can check it out and you can make use of that. And what kind of object I'm creating, that is pod, and metadata you have to give. So name of the uh, thing I'm going to work with is nginx. Okay, and container is what, nginx, and the image type is what. So why I'm specifying image type is, as soon as I give this command, okay, so you know this create a image or create a container of this image, what happens, this kubectl, okay, I'll give, right, kubectl create pod definition file. What happens when, as soon as I create this file, there is a kubelet in worker nodes. Okay, so what will work on kubelet will do, kubelet is like an agent, whatever the uh, commands accessed by the API servers. In Masternode, we'll be having our API server, so it access the request whatever we give. So once the request is accessed by API server, it will communicate with kubelet. So what will kubelet do? It's a agent, so it talks to docker hub, and it fetches the image from docker hub. It's a default thing. Okay, we'll be having docker in our master node and as well as in our worker node. So what this kubelet do, it will talk to API version, I mean API server. So API server access the request, and API server tells that, okay, we have a request that you have to get a image of nginx from docker hub. So as soon as kubelet gets the information from API server, it will go and fetch the image from docker. So then we have to map the port. So container port is 80. So this is how we have to write the pod definition dot YML file. Okay, then we have replica set. As I told, replica set purpose is to maintain a stable or replica of pods. Like as I told you, so we are just going to create a similar pods. Similar a set of pods we are going to create. That is what replica set is. So we are going to maintain it, replica of pods, uh, at a given point of time, and it manages the replicas or pods, ensuring replicas are always available, scaling up and scale down just by giving this command kubectl scale replica asset, and I've created my service my replica set. I have to give a name for my service. Okay, my replica set hyphen hyphen replica z equals to 5. So just by giving this command, we can scale up and scale down. And here we have two approaches. One is desired state and another one is current state. So desired state, the state of pod which is desired, which is desired. Current state means the actual state of pod which are running in Kubernetes cluster. So I'll tell you while I'm showing the practical session, what is desired state and what is current state and all. Okay, so this is how replica set looks like we have pod 1, pod 2, pod 3. And as I told you, so while writing a definition file, so we have to uh, mention the API version for replica set. This is the API version we should use. And what kind of object we are creating, it is a replica set. And name of my service is my replica set. And specialization specifications I'm giving here, replicas, I'm going to create 6 replicas. Selector, what it does, it's going to select. Okay, it's going to select and matches the thing what we have mentioned here. Okay, so here I've given type web server because nginx is a web server. And name my pod I've given for this pod actually. And then labels, author of this whole thing is Injra, that is my name. You can give or you can ignore that. Type web server, and containers C1 and nginx. Name of the container C1. Okay, C1 C2. It goes like that. And image, what's the image, that is nginx. Okay, this is how we write the definition file. So next we have service. Here you can see service is a service. In service I've explained node port here. So node port, however we port map in Docker, same way we're gonna do this node port here. From the name we can identify that it has to do with opening a port on the nodes. Okay, if service is node port, Kubernetes will allocate a cluster wide port with a range of, it's a default range that is 30,000 to 32,767. That is the port number that has been allocated. Okay, so if the service has you know is specified as node port, and user can send a request which will be sent to your service of type node port. Service port will then forward the request to your pod endpoint. So user request for that particular port. So as soon as that in service, as soon as that access that request, and then it directs that request to the endpoints. Okay, so this is how it works. It uh, forwards the request to the a particular port number. A particular port number will be having a application. It forwards that um, request to that particular port number. So this is how the service and node port works. So cluster IP, as I told, if I am having a two container, okay, in one container I have a database and another container I have a application, and this application wants to communicate with database because all the data, uh, which has been stored in database only, so this cluster IP being used because to make a communication between two containers possible. For example, I have one application here. Say, let's say some uh, data inquiry applications. I'm just requesting for some data. So what happens, all the data will be stored in database. This application has to communicate with database. So at that time we make use of this cluster IP, so that it will make possible between two containers to communicate. So then we have last that higher level object that we create deployment. Here we're going to create a number of replica set. So how it works means, for example, I've deployed one applications with some features, but after some time I improve that features. I improve some of the features in the application. What happens, I'll create another replica set, just a copy of it, but updated version. Okay, updated image of that application. So at that time, what happens, once I create this replica set to previously what I've created, it's gonna get dissolved. Okay, so that is how deployment works. Here we have rolling update, means that is what we are going to create a new versions, updated versions of our image that we have uh, in that we have previously. Okay, so that is about deployment. So I just explained it in very simple way. So while I'm showing you practically, so I'll explain it in meticulous in detail. Okay, that is it for today, guys. Actually, I've just selected four important objects, and also I'll show you how to work with this, and I'll show you how to create a node port cluster IP, and also load balancing things, and also deployment, how we can do deployments and all. I'll show you, but this is just a theory part, just to understand what are all objects in Kubernetes. Yeah, that is it about today. Meet you guys in next video.